Humanity is Compatible, written by Eddie. Humanity came to the stars with several problems it decided to share with the rest of the universe. The first was an immense amount of addictive, psychoactive drugs. Despite it being possible to develop a medical solution, there were just so many that it took far longer to work it all out for each individual species' biology. The second problem was an utter and total disregard for any rule of law that they saw as pointless or just stupid, from rules against petting specific creatures to rules against downloading pirated 3D molecular print patterns. These all, however, were minor problems in the grand scheme of the universe when put against the problem that was presented by human sexuality. Humans bred fast, and they were rapacious. This alone would have been an issue, as the galaxy has several species that breed rapidly. The compounding factor was several-fold. Humanity had such adaptive biology and gene engineering that they were compatible with practically every species in the galaxy, and that those that they were not immediately compatible with could make themselves so. The real issue was the fact that humanity was happy to mate with basically every species. Not every human found every species attractive, but there was enough humans attached to each individual species that it was not difficult to find a human mate. Then came the dating systems. Initially, the process of finding a mate was either done through social interactions and communication groupings. Some outliers found companions via the extranet and the text-based communications. Then humanity introduced a semi-automated dating system where you could input your preferences for a mate, and it would provide you with a list of matching organisms that were also signed up to its service. And then it would indicate all those upon whose list you appeared, allowing you to connect with them. This rapidly accelerated the integration of humanity amongst the other species, as human other bonded pairs became more and more common. Humans rapidly integrated themselves into other species' normal mating routines and patterns. Human adaptability when it comes to mated partners was really shocking. Within years, humanity entered the galactic sphere. It wasn't uncommon to see a human male with several female mates from pack mating species. All species where the male-to-female ratio was skewed towards females. Human females could be seen within the company of plenty of other species, often leaning towards the more exotic species with extra limbs and diphilic species. Humanity was rapidly spreading across the stars and claiming space in almost every culture, not via war or trade, but rather by the simple virtue of the fact that it was willing to sleep with almost any species. It took several years beyond this for the issue to manifest further. No one considered the impact of humanity becoming part of most species, as despite humanity having semi-desirable traits to most species, a majority still found their own species to be more preferable for a partner. Then came the first generation of children. Some children were born within months of humanity integrating. However, the issue only became wide-scale a few years after humanity ensconced itself within a species. All the offspring of human other couples were hybrids, not only human or truly the other species, but a half human, half of the other species. You got humanoids with wings and tails, or humans who had additional eyes or limbs. These half-breeds suffered ostracization from their own species for a while. However, when sexual maturation came around, the majority of these half-breeds found that they could share their human parents' predilection towards a willingness to engage in sexual intimacy with a wide array of species. They were more attractive to their parent race than the human parent, but often equally attractive to humans as well as other similar species. It took scientists and analysts several generations to notice the trend and the issue it presented. Humanity's genetic code acted as both a solvent and a glue for every other species in the universe. When mixed with pure human gene code, the species would be diluted down to something that was halfway between human and the other parent. However, when a half-human bred with the third species, the outcome was an utter roll of the dice, producing a species that, while compatible with any three of its origin races, could appear to be any combination of the species. Half-human, half either of the not-human parts, a mix of both non-human species, or any combination therein. By the time this was identified, the state of it was far too widespread to actually do anything about. Humans were mated to all social strata at every species. The Draxian Empress had a human lover. The head war minister of the Norzahawk Alliance was part of a human's harem. It simply wasn't possible to untangle humanity from the galactic genetic lineage. It was even harder to identify if a being had a human or another species in their genetic lineage whose direct gene testing and traits could lie dormant for at least 4 generations. While the issue was being discussed in the halls of science and extreme political factions were ranting, those who were a mix of human and other species, or even 2 species blended via the introduction of human genetic material, were finding places that they excelled. Diplomats bonded over shared heritage from their human halves. Military advisors discovered that they shared a human lover. As a solvent that was human sexuality broke down into species barriers and obliterated genetic lineages simply by sleeping around. The galaxy slowly found itself more focused on expanding in the unexplored areas of terraforming planets to account for the growing populace, rather than warring between the species that were becoming ever more intermixed. Now, whenever we locate a new species, it is a cause for celebration rather than concern. We simply point the humans at them, and within a handful of generations, they are just as much of a genetic mess as the rest of the galaxy. And a few generations after that, they often join the rest of the galaxy and become part of the ever-growing mix of genetics that the wider galaxy has become. End of story. Story number 2. Dark Ship Warning, written by SpeedHump23. An old Coltran legend tells of starships which are not logical and smooth. The QTs barely survived against the Dark Ones 1,000 turns ago, and all QT ship scatters and captains knew to look for wrong ships. But now, it was more tradition than caution. The Morning Light was cruising at the edge of the home system, carrying a standard crew and some scientists wanting to test out a theory on gravitational waves and their Oort cloud. The warning beep of a rather large hyperspace translation was unexpected, but not something to panic about. It was likely a trader dropping in to see if the ML needed anything. The trip was a few weeks to get here, and traveling traders would often stop by government fleet ships to see if they needed anything. The beep tone changed as soon as the ship finished translating back to end space. At that point, it hit the unidentified ship alarm as well as the proximity and an alarm even the captain of the Morning Light had heard only once before. It was a dark class ship. Looking at the light scan of the vessel, Captain Jaso hit the red alert switch. The next button he hit was to start the ship's drive speeding up. Unlike the dark class facing them, the Morning Light did not have a front or back. It was designed for space, which did not need one. The Morning Light made the fastest translation to L-space it had ever made since it was launched. Several crew and scientists had not made it in the crouches before the drop into L-space, but broken shells could be glued back together. The high-speed trip back to Home 1 was also done at maximum speed. Normally, the engines were rated to only 80% maximum, but this condition was one of the oldest and most important ones in the book. Morning Light translated at the inner control lanes with all alarms blaring on all channels. The rather bored control tech sitting at his panel jumped as the speakers started squealing the dark alarms. He only knew the alarm because his daughter had pranked him with it on his last hatching day by setting it as his door chime. She'd been grounded for a full week as a result. Hitting the various buttons to pass the word up to his superiors, the traffic control tech breathed a sigh of relief. Whatever it was, the Morning Light had brought them some time to prepare. It was one of the fastest ships in the quadrant. There was no way any other ship would be here in less than half a day. The control tech swore at himself as soon as he thought that. He had played enough games and seen enough movies to know that the concept of blue poles. As soon as you announce to the gods who look after lost hopes that something could not happen, it always happens. As if on cue, the translation alarms went off and the dark ship appeared right in front of the space station. The ship appearing from L-space was angular. It looked like a deep ocean predator. It was just wrong for a spaceship of a civilized race to appear like that. The strange projections along the sides could be anything. Guns, transmitters, scanners. It made no sense. Some of the scanner crews were reacting with various levels of panic. One young crewman was now rocking in his chair, crying for his shell. Their only hope now was that the defense warships could drive it off. After what seemed like an age, the ship translated back into L-space and disappeared. The traffic controller started breathing again. It was then that he noticed a flashing light on his console. The dark ship had been broadcasting something in its electromagnetic spectrum. Had they been trying to communicate? On the bridge of the TSS Wagga Wagga, Captain Valna Tulk looked at her tactical officer. So going straight to the homeworld would be different this time. They obviously did not hear our broadcasts, either at the outer system with that ship that jumped off, or around that homeworld. How are we to communicate if they won't or can't hear us? End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.